Hello there, I'm Lou Wieland. I publish the official relocation guide on Atlanta that is distributed by the First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta. The First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta is the third largest multiple listing service in the United States. They have over 65,000 agents using that platform for information for listings for residential and commercial properties. Not only in Atlanta, but now recently expanded to Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, Colorado, and California. And I published the magazines. There are 4 different magazines: one for Atlanta, one for North Fulton, one for Cobb, and one for Gwinnett. They are in all of the real estate brokerage firms for their distribution to buyers of residential and commercial property. To acquaint them with the area, although counties are profiled. The First Multiple Listing Service has launched a lot more initiatives into commercial listings, and they have thousands of listings for commercial properties for sale or lease. The magazines are in the Multiple Listing Service stores. They're in all the real estate brokerage firms for realtors to pick up and distribute to their clients. I'm also a commercial realtor with KW Commercial. If I can help you with any of your real estate needs, I'm at lou@louwieland.com. And every week or so we interview community leaders, people who are contributing to the well-being of our metro area. And I'm happy to welcome back Samir Abdullahi, who is the Executive Director of Select Fulton, I guess. Is that the correct title? The Select Executive Director?
Yeah. You added the executive, but I'll take it.
Director, Select Fulton. Okay, so the Director of Select Fulton, the Department of Economic Development for Fulton County. You were, prior to this title, let's see, you were Deputy Director for Select Fulton. Okay, that's where I came up with that. So you were Director, and have served at a lot of other areas of economic development in the metro area for Alpharetta, and I think also for Gwinnett. Is that correct? You were doing a lot of work helping them, and have had a lot of achievements in your period of time, that short period of time that you have served as at Select Fulton. What you've been there? How many years? 6 years? Is that right?
6 years now, building Select Fulton as an organization.
So you've done a lot to help bring businesses to the area. There are 15 unique cities that you serve. You have a bachelor's degree in international relations, a master's in public policy from Georgia State, from the Andrew Young School of Public Policy, so policy studies. Active participant in the Georgia Economic Developers Association and the International Economic Development Council, or on the board of Council of Quality Growth Emerging Leaders, and the board of Tecton, a local nonprofit that provides career training for recently settled refugees. You're a busy guy, and Samir, and we appreciate your service to the metro area. And so Select Fulton is the economic direct. Tell us, that is the economic Department of Economic Development for Fulton County? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And really the way we like to pitch it is the Economic and Workforce Development Initiative for Fulton County. So both our economic development staff as well as our workforce development team. And that's an integration we did as of 2018, really in response to what employers were saying. Obviously, economic development is not just incentive or tax subsidy driven. Right now, especially that we're facing a knowledge-based economy, it's all about workers and chasing talent. And so we have to do a better job in producing talent of the future. I mean, think about a mobile app developer for an iPhone. An iPhone came out in 2007. No one was training to be an iPhone developer in 2006. So it's trying to think about what are those future jobs that are coming down the path, and being able to provide a quality workforce for them. And that helps to bring companies to Fulton County. But Select Fulton, kind of the main function on economic development that we focus on is traditional economic development. And given that we're the regional agency, so I consider cities more local, us as a county being regional, we're working with our partners at the State Department of Economic Development, so Pat Wilson and his team, the Metro Atlanta Chamber, so Katie Kirkpatrick and her team, several utilities like Georgia Powers, the EMCs of the world, many of the big four and those consultants like EY and Deloitte, bringing inbound opportunities, helping them to locate and understand why they should be in Fulton County. So really, I like to think of it as that funnel, as the state and the governor have worked so hard to bring all kinds of great companies, not just these most recent Korean EV companies, but a lot of corporate and technology interest in the Metro Atlanta region. And if they're focused on Metro Atlanta, Samir has a very good shot of locating them in Fulton County. And there's a few reasons for that. If you look at the 29 county Metro Atlanta region, so when Lou, you say Metro Atlanta, that's 29 counties. I can't even list them all because you got to kind of go far out. Fulton County represents 1 in 3 jobs and 40% of all wages generated in that 29 county region. So we really are the economic engine for the region. And we say, so goes Fulton County, so goes Metro Atlanta, and so goes the state of Georgia. And part of the reason why that is, I know your publication is across the Metro Atlanta region. You've listed some of the other counties. And people often ask me, are you competing with Douglas and Gwinnett and Cobb? One, I would say we never compete with surrounding jurisdictions. We work very collaboratively here in Metro Atlanta. I actually co-chair a group called the Regional Marketing Alliance, which is the 11-county ARC region, and we promote VIP events to national site selectors. A, to get them focused on Metro Atlanta, but B, really showing them that we work very well and collaboratively, both kind of vertically from the state down to local communities, as well as horizontally among communities. And candidly, that's not something you traditionally find. If you go to other markets, Chicago won't sit in the same room as Cook County, who won't sit in the same room as the state of Illinois. So as a consultant, if you're bringing in a prospective company, you've got to book 3 days of meetings versus in Metro Atlanta, you can knock it out in a half-day session, because we work that well collaboratively together. But really, our main competitors are other markets. So the North Dallas market, places like Raleigh, Durham, and the Research Triangle. And I hate to talk about COVID. I know we all want to be past COVID, but one of the things that really shook things up, especially with the play for work from home, is I'd say tier B and tier C communities like a Nashville or an Austin, smaller communities, we're competing directly head to head with. But again, the benefit we have here in Fulton County, not just by virtue of being the population center, but we always like to talk about real estate. And we have real estate in the hundreds of millions of square feet. So if you're a prospective corporate locator or location looking at Fulton County, I can plug you either to downtown, I can plug you to midtown, I can plug you into Buckhead, I can plug you into Perimeter, I can plug you into North Fulton. There's a diversity of markets for companies to plug into. So Athena Health and Visa, they may want to be downtown and midtown at Ponce City Market. A group like Mercedes-Benz headquarters that kind of is chasing both that millennial and executive talent. They're looking at places like Perimeter. Or if you're doing more back office and shared services like ADP and HP, they end up traditionally in places like North Fulton. So having those flexibility of commercial real estate options definitely makes recruiting companies and having companies locate here pretty easy. And as I always like to say, obviously the airport is a main driver for a lot of that economic development activity, but it's the fundamentals. Fulton County, the Metro Atlanta region, they're growing in terms of population, and we're still a very cost-effective community to locate in. Business friendly is another way to say it in terms of low taxation, but it's just the cost of living and the ability to have a 1 acre or 2 acre lot and a home. I mean, that's traditionally the kind of companies we do well in recruiting. So if you're doing technology solutions in Oakland, we have a great chance in recruiting that type of company, or a corporate headquarters out of New Jersey. Again, offering those flexibility of lifestyles and a more convenient lifestyle is why many companies decide to locate here in Fulton County and Metro Atlanta.
Okay, why are companies moving here like they are? And you obviously talk to lots of companies during your process of your day. What is the kind of feedback you get in terms of what have they made attraction points for Fulton County, for people from LA and Seattle and Massachusetts, et cetera, for coming here.
Yeah. I mean, those are overbuilt markets. They're somewhat of what I was saying before. Those are very highly competitive markets. Again, if you're Amazon Music or Pandora doing technology solutions on the West Coast, I mean, you're competing with the FANG companies, the Facebooks, the Alphabets, the Amazon. It's a hyper competitive market, and you're paying a premium for basically the same amount of talent or the same quality of talent that you can get here in Metro Atlanta. Again, we've got great institutions like Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Emory, and UGA. We graduate students, and those students want to get away from home, and so they end up in these West Coast and New England type of communities. So it's how do we keep some of that talent base here? Because again, candidly, we do a great job in recruiting companies. We need to do a better job in recruiting and maintaining and keeping that talent pool here locally. But it's really a cost-effective measure. And again, some of the things that hurt us also benefit us, especially when it comes to work from home and flexibility of work options. You don't have to have that prestige or premier location in a hyper overbuilt market like New York and New Jersey, same like parts of California and the Valley. And that's where we've traditionally done well in recruiting for. Although, again, I'd say we do great on the executive talent side of things, the country club living, that sells very well. We need to do a better job in selling the story of kind of Metro Atlanta and why people should be in Metro Atlanta. The number one thing you ask, Lou, to someone about Atlanta, if you ask them, have you ever been to Atlanta? And the first thing they say to you is, I flew through the airport. I'm glad you flew through the airport. That's not really the most exciting way to describe our community. So I think there's a lot more work to be done to help tell the authentic story of Atlanta and Fulton County. So some of the work that needs to be done.
I know you were involved in the Microsoft move and Amazon, and so those are huge and bode well for the future too, because those are growth expanding. It's like crazy. So what were some of the key elements of that negotiation that what people might be interested in knowing about?
Yeah, again, it bleeds into similar things of what I was saying. We're very fortunate to have Microsoft located at Atlantic Yards there in Atlantic Station. And something, again, as you think through the wheel of economic development, what primed the pump there was our development authority of Fulton County, rebranded as Develop Fulton, really worked with Hines as a way to prime the pump on that building. It's a uniquely built building. It's brick. It sits on the kind of edges there of Atlantic Station. So it was a little gamble to build that speculatively, especially a high quality building like that. But Hines really thought that they could go out and recruit a pretty marquee tenant. And several months down the road, after we provided support for that development, we were lucky to work with the state and others to get Microsoft to locate in those buildings. Obviously there's the larger play at Grove Park and what's discussed as a regional headquarters, a second headquarters. You've seen some recent news about Mayor Andre Dickens kind of calling the question on Microsoft's development. We have to remind ourselves they're a large global company. They don't think about individualized locations. They think about packages of locations. They're very adamant about being in Atlanta, about being in the South. This is their first kind of foray into it. And so we see that with a lot of companies. If they're based out of the West Coast mentality in Silicon Valley, they'd always tell themselves they had to be in those locations. And I feel like a lot of them now are really starting to stretch their legs. Again, on our past success, being probably the fourth largest concentration of Fortune 500s. Yeah, when another Fortune 500 headquarters looks at Atlanta, it's we've done this before. We have depth of experience. And I think that's a proven model that builds confidence in executives as they make decisions around additional things like technology solutions centers. We'll talk about it in a minute, but life science is a big thing that the state and the Metro Atlanta region are going to focus on over the next 3 years. So it's really building off the past work of doing well in the corporate and technology solution space. And how do we build upon that, building confidence in companies that they can be successful here, they can find the right talent, but it can also be really cost effective for them to locate here. So it's really good times. It's a great product to sell.
That coupled with the fact that Georgia Tech is here in Midtown and downtown you have Georgia State, it seems like Atlanta is gaining a reputation as a kind of a technology city. Who would imagine? But there are a lot of technology companies that are attracted. When you get, because of the synergy that they have with Microsoft and Amazon and Georgia Tech and Georgia State, don't you think there's that a big plus? Do you you see people saying, hey, listen, if they checking it out of their moving there, maybe I ought to take a long, hard look at Atlanta?
We have real world use cases. MasterCard is located over at Plant City Market because Visa opened a large technology center in the old Norfolk Southern headquarters. So it is a little bit of that FOMO, that fear of missing out that exists. And then you've got companies like NCR. Where are they located? As close as they can possibly be to Georgia Tech, given that they've moved from kind of a mechanical operations company to a technology solutions provider. So there's definitely that strong demand and strong interest to be around those educational institutions, but we shouldn't only think about the locally homegrown ones. Tuscaloosa is a nice place to graduate from. I'm not sure that's a town I want to stay in after graduation. Same with places like Gainesville and the like. So we do a great job in recruiting from ACC, SEC schools. Some of the best talent out of those schools naturally gravitate towards large, developed communities like Fulton County and Atlanta. So, we also have that talent base that we're able to tap into.
About artificial intelligence, and have you getting feedback on how powerful that is in shaping our destiny?
Yeah. There's kind of the commercial real estate side of things that we're much more closely involved with. Our development authority recently approved a public subsidy for X, which is kind of formerly Twitter, for them to bring really a major AI operations center here in the QTS buildings off of Jefferson Street. So that's a lot of what we're seeing is our existing data centers or data centers that are planning to come online here shortly, being repowered with AI and AI tools, which consumes a lot more energy, consumes a lot more, kind of water infrastructure and wet utilities, but is powering the future. As we talk with employers and how they're leveraging AI, it's very similar with other tools that they're using internal to their companies as a way to accelerate the work. So imagine instead of having to send an email to a paralegal and waiting for the paralegal to do that work, you as an attorney could just go into some type of AI tool like ChatGPT and get that kind of low-hanging fruit paralegal work done quickly. So it's not necessarily removing that attorney, but enabling them. Now, as that spools up and it takes over and gets more complicated around different functions, as you saw, Tyler Perley has made a pause on kind of his studio expansion there on the west side, exclusively because some of these new AI video generation tools that are coming out. So I think the question mark is still kind of really out there as to how that'll impact the workplace. But what we're seeing right now is really more on the commercial development side of things and how that's driving very strong data center demand in the Metro Atlanta region. We get a lot of looks. Places like Douglas County get a lot of looks. We've heard essentially Virginia is closed, and so Georgia has kind of a ripe and unique opportunity to capture some of those opportunities, but in a managed way. And I think you've seen some of the press between Georgia Power and the state as to how they're working to manage these opportunities in a thoughtful way, so we don't box out, I guess, other opportunities related to Korean EVs and other kind of more traditional jobs.
What is the status of opportunity zones at this stage in terms of helping areas that could benefit from increased business?
Yeah, we really haven't leveraged. I mean, I don't think we've seen a lot of activity in the federal opportunity zone space as the program was set up. I think a lot of those low-hanging fruits, so places that were qualified as a federal opportunity zone, but were still kind of could generate strong demand, strong interest, places that you would want to build, those went fairly quickly. It's really the other underserved areas that are much more challenged, even with a federal opportunity zone overlay. It's still challenged to get investors and people to look at those underserved areas that aren't the most kind of low-hanging fruit. I think before we started this call, you started to mention what the capital markets look like. Obviously, that puts a constraint on everyone's pro forma as you're looking forward to say, well, I got to get a cash-on-cash return that's so much more substantial than any comp that I can demonstrate in the area. And so that's what we continue to see places, and especially in places like South Atlanta and South Fulton, just continued underinvestment, Again, a lot of that has to do with some legacy things around redlining, which again, why we don't have comps to demonstrate why you could build in those areas. I'll give you a perfect example. Steve Nygren and his team that have built Serenity down in Chattahoochee Hills. If you went to a bank today and said, would you fund this initiative? They tell you no, because that shouldn't exist. If you look at Serenity today, it shouldn't exist, but yet it does. Some of that is generated because there's internal wealth and internal capital that help to generate that first set of Serenity. So someone could go out there and build a home, $2 million, $1 million out of cash out of their pockets. They weren't going to a commercial lender. But now as they try to reiterate the space to more commercial development, so spa, senior housing, more commercial developments, the banks are saying, no, we're not going to fund this because, again, they look at the comps in the area and they don't really have anything comparable to say this area could generate it. But it's the same thing we say about, could you have a large corporate headquarters in South Fulton? Well, Chick-fil-A and Delta exist. It's one of these, if you don't vision it for yourself, then no one else is going to vision it for you. And that's a little bit of what South Fulton is going through right now is creating a vision and a quality and standard that they're willing to stomach, and what they see for themselves, and trying to meet the market a little bit halfway as to how do we get some things coming out of the ground. As you know, North Fulton is well built out. We want to bring some of those opportunities south of 20.
I drove by Turner Field the other day. I was looking at some property down in East Point, and that area by the Turner Field, which is now, of course, owned by Georgia State, is booming. Yeah. And prices are ridiculous, like $700,000 for a two-bedroom townhouse. I mean, what is responsible for their phenomenal success in that area? I heard opportunity zones had a part in that too. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that. I would imagine so. Again, the fact that you've got kind of an anchored university there and their willingness to commit public dollars is always a great way to prime the pump on private investment. I mean, Summerhill is the neighborhood you're talking about. MARTA's first BRT system, or BRT route, bus rapid transit, will actually be going from downtown to Summerhill in a circular fashion. So I think that just speaks to, I think, everyone in the region's focus on that area as a way to demonstrate how do you reprime the pump on underserved areas. But Summerhill has been a long journey, a slow grow, be intentional. Someone I work with lived out there for over 30 plus years. So they must have seen very different iterations, many maybe false promises that haven't delivered. So it is great to see a place like that get rejuvenated. Again, some of the basics that we take for granted, like an anchor grocery store like Publix, being in that area, just can be huge wins and provide huge volumes. But again, part of what they've built there that didn't used to exist there, apartments, like places for people to live. It's going to be the same case in all of our underserved areas, especially as the refocus right now is around downtown and the Gulch, putting as much housing as you can to have people existing and living down there. I've worked down there. Everything shuts down at 5. No one that's outside past 5 o'clock really should be out there, right? And so it's how do we bring some of that Midtown effect, which Midtown was a legacy area. They put lots of housing and a lot of people there and rejuvenated it. It's something that we need to bring to other parts of the county as well.
That's quite a. What about the Beltline? Don't people, when they come here, don't they tell you, hey, listen, we hear about the Beltline. What we want to know absolutely. About the Beltline. We want to be near that. How effective is that?
I mean, look, again, it's similar with kind of like Georgia State and Summerhill. When you've got a public agency that signals they're going to invest significant public dollars in the ground, it helps to generate a lot of private interest. The debate right now is going around the light rail system that was always envisioned as part of the Beltline, whether that'll be incorporated as a way to really knit these communities together. Atlanta's been very aggressive and smart in the way that they've leveraged the tax allocation district that Fulton County funds significantly to make the Beltline happen and to bring newer things like affordability, which they may not have been so aggressive on the front end. Clyde Higgs and his team have done a yeoman's job, not only bringing the vision to fruition, but I think bringing it in on time. I think his plan is to close it out by 2030. And he's done some things along the way, like getting a special services district to get a little bit more cash into the hopper to get that done. But I always like to think things like MARTA, things like the Beltline, which I see as economic engines for the region, the state doesn't fund those at all. Those are all locally burdened by our local taxpayers. It would be great to get some additional investment, not just philanthropic, but state funding on some of these real economic drivers for the region as well.
What what's going on with the multifamily category? I know some areas don't like it, some areas welcome it. Can you give us a macro paradigm on that industry category?
Yeah, I mean, we don't deal too much in residential. What I would say is I was asked by a leadership class of youth from Johns Creek Chamber recently, like, how do we fix the affordable housing issue? And it's your basic microeconomics course. It's a supply and demand issue. We just don't have enough supply. We aren't building at the clip that we need to. Every single family homeowner that gets into a single family home wants to be the last single family homeowner in the area, or just owner of the area, the last resident of their community. And that's something that we've got to figure out. Atlanta, and very progressive Atlanta, tried to do that by getting rid of single family zoning so that you could build in your back garage an accessory dwelling unit, so an ADU. Now, instead of just owning a house, I've got a garage in the back that a student at Georgia Tech can leverage, and I can rent out, make some money, and we're starting to fill the affordability issue. Decatur just recently, I think, passed legislation that somewhat walked away from single-family zoning to allow for some of that. Again, you can have a single-family home next to a duplex, and then a single-family home, and then a quadplex. So it's really thinking more innovatively. How do we remove some of these barriers to development? Because if you talk to the development community, as you know, the capital market is very constrained. And so if you do have to go out and seek lending at a premium, it's going to limit your options and choices. So those underserved areas that have no proven model that you could regenerate that wealth, you're definitely not investing in that. Well, now you're not going to do kind of a basic product. You're going to do a luxury product because you know there's demand and you can get your money back. So it's what our county manager always says, the system produces exactly what it's designed to. We're in a market right now where entitlements are very expensive. Getting capital access is very expensive. And then putting it all together successfully is very difficult. And it doesn't lend itself towards rapid housing. I mean, we're not building housing today at a clip that we were 10, 20 years ago. One of the few communities that's actually building quickly is Gwinnett, and they're still behind. So it's a real challenge as to how do we be flexible around zoning options? How do we be flexible around, if you have a suburban office, places like Tucker that has suburban office, if you have a sea of parking, can you do a parking deck and fill the rest of it with apartments? And during the day, the office users use the majority of the parking deck. And during the night, the apartment users are using a majority of the parking deck. But yeah, this idea of we don't want mixed use development or density development. I get that. I get that natural sensitivity to it all. I invested in this community because it looked like this. It just is unfortunate because it does limit our region's growth and limit opportunities for future families to exist in those communities as well.
Any specific initiatives you would like to highlight today on the show?
The one big one that I'm focused on, the county's focused on, is called Renew the District. It's the county's largest redevelopment activity that it's ever undertaken. It's over $180 million plus of public and private funds that are going into what I call future-proofing Fulton Industrial. If you're familiar with that area, it's 55 million square feet of legacy industrial. It's one of the largest concentrations in the Southeast, but it's dated. It used to be a little bit more dangerous and criminal activity, and we've worked to somewhat clean up that area. Our focus is really around I-20 and Fulton Industrial, including our executive airport, so formerly the Charlie Brown Airport. And the ways that we're doing that is kind of three-pronged approach. One is around modern public services. So we just built our brand new, I think it's 55,000 square foot animal services facility. It's the nicest facility I've ever seen. I say, if I get injured, don't take me to Grady, take me to that facility instead, just because it looks so gorgeous. We're building a new public safety training facility that groups like MARTA and others would leverage, since we're somewhat moving out of the South Fulton Arena. So that's one prong. Another prong is redevelopment activities. So there's about 6 hotels that were really the nuisance hotel, creating trafficking and blight issues on Fulton Industrial. Basically, people walking on Fulton Industrial that just don't need to be out there. What we've heard pretty unanimously from the CID and from the city, nobody should be housed on that district, right? It's truckers coming in, truckers coming out. Nobody needs to be living there. So we've acquired these hotels and shuttered these facilities, and they'll be going out for a redevelopment for nicer amenities. Again, fast casual food is one of the things that we've heard is desperate on the district, places for trucks to park, so truck parking and the like for them to be safe. So we purchased all of this and looking forward to good redevelopment, especially there at I-20. And then lastly, the expansion and future-proofing of our executive airport. While big fans of Peachtree DeKalb Airport, those are single-prop planes going up Chattanooga to play golf. 75% of our takeoff and landings are private jets. It's the Arthur Blanks of the world. It's the Coca-Colas of the world. It's the Cox Communications of the world. It's the Northrop Southern of the world. We're actually hosting the Metro Atlanta Chamber out there this Thursday to give them a tour of some of our plans. Because I'll tell you, Lou, we cannot recruit another Fortune 500 headquarter to Georgia or to Atlanta, but for the expansion of that airport. Norfolk Southern is here because they have hangar space at our airport. PDK is full. Honeywell is located in Charlotte, not in Fulton County right now, because we didn't have space for their corporate jets. And we're going to see ongoing pressure, especially as it ramps up to World Cup. We've just completed out our airport master plan, which will essentially call for the closing of one of our crosswind runways. By closing that runway, we'll be able to create more hangar space and more opportunities to do corporate recruitment. And we also need to expand the runway. I know you and I can't really relate, but the modern private jets these days to take off fully fueled need about 8,000 feet of runway. And we're about 5,000 to 6,000. So we're a little short. So literally Arthur Blank, if he's traveling far, has to get in his jet, take off, fly in a traffic pattern up in Tennessee to catch Hartsfield-Jackson, come back to Hartsfield-Jackson, land, get the fuel that he needs to go as far as he's going because they've got the longer runways. You know, it's that kind of disconnect that we have right now. I don't imagine Dallas is making their billionaires fly like that. So it's really essential that we expand that airport to serve the growth in corporate interest that we have in the Metro Atlanta region. That's why we're bringing the chamber out there. They do so much work in the region to grow corporate interest. They need to be focused on that as well. So that's kind of the big redevelopment activity that we're taking over on the west side.
Well, thanks very much, Samir, for coming on the show. It's very interesting. We could talk about so many of the other things that are going on. You've got a lot of balls that you're juggling constantly, but that sounds very exciting to see that that airport. That airport has evolved beautifully over the years too. It's just I can see now that you mention it that it is an integral part of our success. So, thank you very much for your service to the community, Samir. And but appreciate the role model that you play towards, that you enjoy towards our residents and our citizens. So thank you very much for your service.
Sure, it's a privilege. Like I said, Lou, it's a great product to sell. Born in Sandy Springs, a product of Fulton County Schools. So pleased to be able to do kind of the work of the people and also the business interests so that we have vibrant communities in places. I've tried to leave. I lived in Korea 2.5 years. I was born in Denmark. I've tried to leave Atlanta, but it keeps calling me home. So I think I'm stuck.
Yeah, it could be. You're pretty fortunate to be stuck here. Believe me, I lived all over the place, New York and Pittsburgh and D.C., et cetera. So I'm extremely happy to be here too. So thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.